area before moving on. While the open landscape of the Kalahari is not traditionally elephant habitat, the movement of these animals could signal shifting migration patterns or the expanding range of elephants in southern Botswana.
And over 4,000 people have been abused by Catholic priests in Italy in cases reported since 2020. Victims grouped alleged on Friday renewing pressures on bishops to confront a crisis that has long plagued the world's largest Christian faith. The unofficial tally by Retel Al Abuso, Italy's largest church abuse victims group, is based on victims' accounts, judicial sources and cases reported by the media. The church did not say how far back the alleged abuses cases occurred. However, the Italian Bishops' Conference, CEI, which has criticized the Vatican's Child Protection Commission last week, has not commented on the findings. In a recap of your top story, Guinea's presidential candidates face a $100,000 deposit for December's elections, expected to hand power to civilians despite previous high cost of $1 million. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Matapela Mahape.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline, Banyana Banyana have now averted a potential financial crisis, and women's marathon world record holder Ruth Chepngetich is likely to lose endorsements and sponsorships. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la double K
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. Enjoy the conversation. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Our fitness coach, her name is Yvonne Dimagazo Pasha. How to remain consistent with gyms, Dima, and I'm going to put you on the spot right now. As we are talking, I will send you my picture and I want you to tell me what you think I should work on. Because, you know, when I look at myself, Dima, I think I'm very handsome. I'm so good looking, oh my goodness. Like here at Channel Africa where I work, I think I'm one of the most good looking people ever. Like sometimes when I look at myself in the mirror, I never get used to how good I look. I'm just amazing.
You're okay with the way you're looking. You wish people could and now you want to put me on the spot.
do I need gym?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just consider eating healthy, cutting down a few foodstuffs such as junk.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
It is exactly 9 minutes after 4 p.m. A very good afternoon to you, Africa. A lot in store for you today. We'll be doing our business roundup with Victor Khumusana, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. We'll be looking at all the top stories on the African continent, including those emanating from Kenya, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, as well as Nigeria. But let's start off with this today. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has concluded his state visit to Vietnam, where the two nations agreed to elevate relations to a strategic partnership. The move marks a major step in deepening South-South cooperation, with the two countries pledging closer collaboration in trade, digital innovation and global governance. Ramaphosa now heads to Malaysia, where he will be attending the Asian Summit with other global leaders. Bunolo Maribe reports.
President Cyril Ramaphosa received a warm welcome at the Presidential Palace in Hanoi, marking a two-day state visit aimed at strengthening political and economic ties between South Africa and Vietnam. Talks between the two nations covered trade, defense, agriculture and technology. President Ramaphosa used the platform to underscore the shared vision for cooperation between Africa and Southeast Asia.
We take a decisive step towards the commencement of a process to elevate our bilateral relationship to a strategic partnership. This reflects our shared commitment to deepening cooperation across a range of sectors. These sectors include defense, agriculture, justice and constitutional development, mineral and petroleum resources, biodiversity conservation, trade and investment, security, and a number of other areas.
The decision to elevate ties comes as both nations mark key milestones, with Vietnam celebrating 80 years of independence and South Africa chairing the G20 this year, as the president outlined.
This visit forms part of a broader effort to strengthen South Africa's engagement with Southeast Asia, a region of growing strategic importance for us as South Africa, as we seek to broaden our market access across the world. This visit has also elevated our cooperation at the multilateral level, and where we continue to cooperate with Vietnam in a number of United Nations fora and many others.
President Ramaphosa also paid tribute to Vietnam's late leader, Ho Chi Minh, describing his legacy as a beacon of resilience and unity. The president concluded his remarks by reiterating his hope for strong relations between the two countries.
And together we reaffirm our shared commitment to peace, to prosperity, and to inclusive multilateralism along the number of areas. So our relationship will continue getting stronger and stronger at a strategic level.
As this visit wraps up, President Ramaphosa now heads to Malaysia, where he will participate in the ASEAN Summit together with world leaders, including US President Donald Trump and China's Xi Jinping. Bonolo Maribe, SABC News.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 13 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African time. Joining us this afternoon for our weekly business roundup is Victor Khumswana, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. Victor is also the director for marketing and communication at the University of Limpopo, the executive director to be more specific. Victor, good afternoon. Good to have you with us once again. Ooh, Victor, our connection is very, very compromised, but let's try and see how far we do get. If not, I will have to ask our producer, Mabu, to try and get you back on a better line. But let's perhaps start off with some developments as far as Tullow Oil PLC is concerned. Looks like their sale it has gone through. It's been finalized. All right, Victor, we are going to try and get you back on a better line. That's Victor Khumswana, author of Africa is Open for Business. We'll talk around the finalization of the sale. Tullow Oil, they finalized their sale of their entire working interest in Kenya. And Victor, you join us once again. Good to have you. I'm glad we've got you on a better line now. I was just saying that perhaps a good place to start is looking, all right, that's not sounding good at all. We'll try once again with Victor Khumswana. So we'll focus on Tullow Oil. We'll also look at developments around the government in Zimbabwe. We know that second-hand market and the second-hand sale of clothing in Zimbabwe has been quite lucrative for those who are on the ground, for the informal market. But what impact is this actually having on the formalized textile industry in Zimbabwe. Also this afternoon, we'll look at a landmark maize procurement agreement that has been signed between Malawi and Zambia. We have actually been seeing a lot of cooperation specifically around maize with these two countries. And Nigeria also on the spotlight today with Victor Khumusoano as we focus on yet another month of profits for that country. It's 15 minutes after 4.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Victor, very good afternoon to you. Good to have you with us. Welcome.
Good to talk to you again, Thami.
Beautiful. Victor, let's start off with the finalization of Tullow Oil PLC's exit from Kenya.
Yeah, Tullow Oil is a London-listed company. It's an Irish oil company which did a lot of oil business in Uganda, in Ghana, but it was also in Kenya. But somehow they have decided, I think they are rationalizing or consolidating their assets across the continent, moving out of what they consider high-risk markets or where they believe the investments will take a lot longer to materialize. And this is one of them, Kenya being one of them. They are doing this in two tranches. They're going to get $40 million this year, and they want to get $40 million next year. And then they will retain what they call no cost back in right, which means the right of first refusal. If the new buyer, which is Gulf Energy, decides to sell the stake, they will be allowed to get in and buy up to 30%. But they have decided they are selling 100% of their business after 14 years of being in that country. I think it's a matter of time, realizing it's taking too long for their liking. The investors don't like uncertainty, and maybe Gulf Energy is just looking at this as an addition to one of their larger portfolios of oil assets.
It doesn't sound, Victor, that they're too convinced that an exit is indeed the most profitable way to go, because they're still maintaining that right of first refusal. Why keep the back door open?
Yeah, it means, like I'm saying, some people are long-term investors, Thami. When they buy, they can wait. In other words, you can afford to wait because you are not under pressure to realize cash returns or profits till you can pay dividends. So Gulf Energy, as you know, the Gulf is obviously having a lot more assets, whereas Tullow Oil is a British company or London-listed, which is looking for assets. They had something in Uganda, they had something in Ghana, and they started in the 2000s, and they were able to make money already out of there. So I think it's a matter of they realize they are going to have to wait a lot longer. And because they are a listed entity, they are reporting either losses or lazy capital on their balance sheet. But once somebody can make the assets to work, they don't have a problem owning a stake of that. So they are saying, carry the waiting, the burden of waiting, because the longer we wait, the more our shareholders think we cannot optimize or convert assets that we have acquired abroad.
It's all about low-hanging fruits for them right now. But let's take a look at Zimbabwe. We've spoken about the second-hand clothes market there for a while and how it's something really beneficial and popular in the informal market, but not really boding well for the organized textile industry.
Yeah, this is not about Zimbabwe, honestly. It's about the clothing or the textiles industries all over the world. If you have time, I don't know if you've watched the documentary on Netflix called Buy Now. That is an example. I think we are producing just a little too much of the textiles, more than we need. And the second-hand clothing market in Africa is very vibrant. especially because people are buying brands. They would rather buy a second-hand Levi jeans or something from H&M rather than buy what you can call a no-name brand or not a premium brand. So as a result, companies like Truworths Zimbabwe that were founded in 1957 found themselves closing 34 stores in 1 year at one point. And eventually they were sold for $1 and delisted from the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. So this is a problem all over across the African continent, but also all over the developing world, where people cannot afford to buy this off the shelf, brand new. They end up buying them. And people who love fashion in London, US, buy clothes to go to one event or one party, and then they sell them because they want to replace their wardrobe. So it's a problem for the textiles industry in Africa in general, but I just found Zimbabwe to be another case in point.
We're going to take a quick break, Victor, and when we come back, just to focus on the maize procurement agreement between Malawi and Zambia. It's gone exactly 21 minutes after 4.
AUSISA, the Association of Water and Sanitation Institution of South Africa, is a platform uniting Africa's water professionals. This November, Africa leads the conversation on water and sanitation. Join global and African leaders at the AUSISA Africa and Global South Dialogue 2025 from the 9th till the 12th of November at the Emperor's Palace, Johannesburg. From policy innovation, this is where action meets collaboration for a water future. Register today at ausisa-watersan-dialogue.org or follow at AUSISA on social media. AUSISA, working together for sustainable water and sanitation security in Africa. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
We continue our focus on some of the leading business stories on the African continent with Victor Khumuswana. So, Victor, this relationship between Malawi and Zambia, we have seen it warming up quite a lot as far as the maize procurement is concerned, and a landmark maize agreement has now been signed.
Yeah, 200,000 metric tons, a $76 million transaction. And the story here, Thami, is that Malawi has gone through a real turmoil, and it didn't help that they also had the elections recently. Whenever there are elections, many investors will say, let's wait and see what happens. And as a result, they were already experiencing drought or climatic problems, and that affected their stock or their reserves for maize in particular. And porridge, as you know, maize meal is part of the staple diet in many African countries. Whereas Zambia, on the other hand, has a surplus of about 1 million tons. So it's a no-brainer, but it just helps. Often when people say we have a food crisis, Thami, they don't always mean they can't afford to buy. They sometimes mean there's no willing seller close by, because normally agricultural commodities are sold in what are called futures markets, forward transactions. So often you find that although there is supply next door, that stock has already been committed in a forward contract, or the people who have the stock are not willing to sell to you. So that's where the relationship with neighboring countries in Africa is so important. The relationship between Malawi and Zambia, making it easier for them to secure the stock. It's a crisis if you can't feed your country or your population because you are risking a huge political instability. And I think with the new government of Mutharika, they couldn't afford to not do this transaction.
Victor, we'll have to leave it at that for this afternoon, but thank you once again. Always great catching up with you. Have a great weekend ahead.
It's been a pleasure. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. That's Victor Khumuswana, author of Africa is Open for Business and Africa Bounces Back. He takes us to 24 minutes after 4.
African enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
We turn our sights now to Ghana, where the country's president, John Dramani Mahama, has unveiled the country's infrastructure plan, which forms part of the nation's long-term development strategy. The plan aims to address infrastructure challenges in some of the key sectors, including energy, water and sanitation, and commercial infrastructure. The new 30-year framework, which is developed by the government through the National Development Planning Commission, is expected to be finalized by the domestic market and the domestic private sector. For more on this, we're joined on the line by an economist based in Ghana, George Antwi. A very good afternoon to you, George. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. George, how does this infrastructure plan align with Ghana's current growth trajectory?
All right, thank you, and good afternoon to the people of Africa and my fellow Ghanaians. So this is a call to Ghana's development agenda because we are looking at how we can expand infrastructure in the various priority areas of our economy country. And I think this is a good call. It dates back to the likes of our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, who had that ambitious that ambition to actually expand the infrastructure of Ghana. And since that time, government over the years have been trying to invest in infrastructure. Yes, in the last 60 years, we have not done bad, but I think we could do better. And now, this bold initiative by the current president to ensure that we actually scale and expand our infrastructure needs. It's a way of also propelling our economic growth. So, for me, it's a good call for we the Ghanaian people. We are hoping that to go beyond politics, to go beyond individual affairs. It should be based on a pragmatic approach to ensuring that we're able to achieve this ambitious 2057 agenda of Ghana infrastructure plans, and we are looking forward to it as a country.
And on that note, George, this has been a long time coming. And at the launch of the Ghana Infrastructure Plan, President Mahama did indicate that the plan was initially completed in 2016. It was then revised in 2019, but it was shelved for a number of years. Given the inefficiency that the president cited, what are the institutional reforms that really need to take place, that are essential, that have to underpin the credible delivery of this project?
Yes, I think the president was emphatic on the fact that we need to actually check our public spending, so we ensure that we are not overspending. If you look at the report by the Auditor General's Department of Ghana, you could see that there was cost overruns of about $70 billion in terms of how we are handling our projects and infrastructure. So these are bottlenecks. If we are closing that gap of $70 billion, not leaking out and going straight into infrastructure programs and implementation, it means that we are going to achieve that objective. I think one thing that is also very key is also capping our budget spending in terms of our debt to GDP ratio to about 45%, which is very emphatic because the more we overspend, the more we pile out our debt. It means that debt servicing is going to eat out away our the money is available for us to actually finance our infrastructure. And then also, if you look at the approach of this government, they are very measured with how they are spending in their various priority areas and sectors. So I think that is what I see as a commitment from this current government, that they stick to the plan and ensure that they invest by this bold initiative by the government. So for me, I think this fiscal discipline is one key thing that we will do, and also ensure that we will not compound so much debt so that it will not lead us to servicing debt, which is very expensive for our country as a developing nation. So sticking to not doing a lot of excesses in terms of
just
overruns,
really,
and then also ensuring that debt.
Right. I mean, that fiscal discipline that you're talking about.
Of course.
As we wrap up this afternoon, I wonder what opportunities exist for foreign direct investment, and also perhaps in that let's include technology and skills transfer, or even regional trade spillovers for this infrastructure plan.
Yes. I think if you look at existing programs by the government, for instance, you are looking at the big push agenda of the government, ensuring that about $13 billion coming in this year, getting to next year. Next year, they are looking at even investing about $30 billion coming in to support infrastructure development. And if you look at the priority areas, we are looking at developing our digital infrastructure. We are looking at developing road infrastructure, and then energy, which is also the backbone of our economy. So with this specific approach to dealing with some of these challenges, I believe we should be able to inch closer to the bigger objective by the government. So, of course, existing programs and the focus of this current government is actually leading us to achieving this ambitious objective.
George Antwi, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's economist based in Ghana, George Antwi. He takes us to exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time as we take you now to the markets desk, where Thabiso Lehoko is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Thami, and good afternoon. $1 in South Africa is trading at 17 Rand 35. Botswana 13 Pula 28. Namibia 17 Namibian dollars 35. And in Zambia it's at 22 Kwacha 26 to the dollar. In Kenya the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 244. In Ethiopia 150 birr 574. In Uganda it's at 3,000 shilling 464. And in Tanzania 2,000 shilling 481. In Nigeria the dollar will cost you 1,461 naira. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 47 Egyptian pound 54. In Tunisia, it's at 2 dinar 927. Algeria 129 dinar 552, and the Moroccan dirham is trading at 9,139 to the dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 911 775 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is at 2,190 to the dollar. Commodities markets: gold $4,061, platinum $1,591 per ounce, Brent crude oil is at $66.41 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And for the latest from the business of sport, here is Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Good afternoon, Thami. We begin with football news. After they faced an uncertain future without the main sponsor, Banyana Banyana have now averted a potential financial crisis. Global energy company Sasol has eventually renewed its sponsor with the national women's football team. The announcement reaffirms Sasol's continued commitment as the longest-standing sponsor of women's football in South Africa, dating back to 2009, and extends their sponsorship to the end of 2029. The previous sponsorship cycle ended on the 30th of June 2025. While renewal negotiations took longer than the South African Football Association says it provided an opportunity for both parties to align or share objectives that will ultimately benefit women's football. Running a professional football club comes with heavy price tag in terms of weekly operations and traveling to and from venues in domestic leagues, and even more costs for teams participating in continental tournaments, accommodations and meals while in camp. Top leagues in Africa, like South African Premier League, subsidize teams to ease the financial burden for clubs. While football leagues in Africa don't assist their teams to help ease the financial pressure, Zambia's football analyst Isaac Chipandanga says the financial problems for African leagues is multifaceted.
Well, the issue of giving subsidies from the Football Association to teams that compete in domestic leagues across the African continent is a very difficult one to tackle. Remember that football associations themselves are cash-strapped across the African continent. Many of them survive basically because, the government through the Ministry of Sports supports the senior national team and other national teams, depending on which country you're coming from, and of course a little bit of a grant that comes in from FIFA on an annual basis. And for me, that is a serious concern, because it means that football associations are not doing enough to brand themselves in the market space to attract enough sponsorship. And that for me, I think, is a major concern that many of the football associations across the African continent are grappling with at the moment.
Chipandanga says lack of good marketing robs the teams and the leagues an opportunity to attract sound financial assistance from private sector.
And I'll take point in case for Zambia, where I come from. I mean, the Copper Queens, the Zambia women's senior national team, has qualified to the last 2 Olympics, the World Cup, have been at the last 2, or should I say last 3 now, Women's Africa Cup of Nations, competitions on the African continent. But even after doing all that, it's only recently that a sponsor has come on board for the top division in women's football, domestic women's football in the country, called Eden University. The Football Association and the Zambian Premier League, which runs professional football in the country, have failed to attract even more sponsors from a league that has produced the likes of Barbara Banda, Rachel Kundananji, and many others. So it means that somebody at the Football Association, in terms of the marketing department, is not doing a good enough job.
On to athletics sports. Women's marathon world record holder Ruth Chepngetich is banned for 3 years after the Kenyan admitted to anti-doping rule violations. Chepngetich is likely to lose endorsements and sponsorship. As a world record holder, Chepngetich likely attracts sponsorship from major brands like Nike, Adidas, or local Kenyan sponsors. Elite runners often secure deals for apparel, shoes, and nutrition products with contracts ranging from $50,000 to $500,000 annually, depending on prominence. Appearance fees for major races can also range from $10,000 to $50,000 per event. Based on her race earnings, potential sponsorships, and appearance fees, Chepngedich's net worth is estimated to be between $1.5 million and $3 million as of 2025. We will end with basketball. Liberia Basketball Association Secretary General Calvin Dick says they're facing legal threats from hotel operators and an airline ticket provider over unpaid debts totaling more than $100,000. Dick says, telling the investigators that the association owes 4 hotels: Royal Grand Hotel, Cape Hotel, Mama Point Hotel, and King's Hotel, along with an airline ticketing firm for services used during the international tournaments earlier this year. He said the LBA submitted a $60,000 budget to the Ministry of Youth and Sports more than 2 months ago, prior to traveling for the Afro basketball competition in Rwanda. The ministry forwarded the request to Finance Minister Augustine Ngafuan, but Dick said no action has been taken. Dick added that players and officials who represented Liberia in tournaments held in Liberia and Rwanda have not received per diem due to financial shortfalls. He called on the government to release the allotted funds to settle the association's debts and avoid further reputational damage. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa. The African perspective. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus, Channel Africa, the African perspective.
It is 38 minutes after 4 p.m. Central African Time. 90% of organizations find insider attacks difficult to detect, at least more difficult than the external ones. This is one of the key findings contained in a newly released report that looks into the growing cybersecurity risks that are facing financial services firms across South Africa and the broader African continent. The report was released by global management consulting firm Thami Ngubeni compiled this report.
In recognition of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, Thami's latest report, Securing the Insider, Threat Prevention in Financial Services, explores the rising impact of insider threats and outlines a strategic framework for prevention and resilience. As digital transformation accelerates, so too does the complexity and frequency of cyber threats, particularly those originating from within organizations. Joanne Paul, Associate Director at Thami, says this report paints a clear picture on the breaches emanating internally.
Thami report, Securing the Inside, reveals a growing cybersecurity risk in financial services, insider threats. While most firms focus on external attacks, this report highlights how internal actors, whether malicious or accidental, are increasingly responsible for breaches. Nearly 1/3 of breaches come from within, driven by privilege misuse, outdated systems, and human error. Financial services firms are prime targets due to the sensitive data they hold, with insider threats becoming more frequent, harder to detect, and more costly.
Some of the key findings contained in the report include insider threats account for nearly 1/3 of cybersecurity breaches in financial services, and 90% of organizations find insider attacks as difficult or more difficult to detect than external ones, among others, which Paul says the cost of the breach is millions of dollars.
Motivations ranging from financial gain to ideological reasons. Plus, legacy systems increase insider threat by 40%, and the average breach cost in financial services is just over $6 million, significantly higher than other industries. Insider risk isn't just an IT issue, it's a strategic business concern that demands board level attention and cross functional action.
The recommendations in the study suggest that the implanting of insider threat prevention into business strategy and governance organizations can not only protect sensitive data and maintain regulatory compliance, but also build the trust necessary to thrive in an increasingly digital economy. As Paul says, there are 4 strategies that could ensure a strong defense system.
Carney recommends 4 strategic actions to help move from reactive defense to proactive resilience, ensuring insider threats are anticipated, detected, and contained. First, use proactive threat modeling to identify risks early. Second, build a cyber-aware culture where every employee is part of the defense. Third, deploy advanced tech like AI and behavior analytics to detect anomalies. And fourth, create a cyber data vault, a central hub for threat intelligence and response. The message is clear. Insider threats are systemic, and resilience demands both intelligent tools and even more intelligent, vigilant people.
For Channel Africa News, I am Thami Ngubeni in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is exactly 4:42 Central African Time. Africa's digital transformation, accelerated by the rising mobile penetration as well as new technologies like 5G, was under the spotlight at the Mobile World Congress in Kigali, Rwanda. Industry leaders discussed how telecom companies can evolve beyond more connectivity to become key drivers of socio-economic growth in Africa. It also highlighted that despite the rapid transformation, critical changes remain, and challenges like ensuring inclusive access, building sustainable networks, and developing innovative business models to unlock the continent's full potential. To unpack this further, joining us this afternoon is Lohini Moodley, partner in the Communications, Media and Technology practice at Oliver Wyman. A very good afternoon to you, Lohini. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, Thami. Lovely to be here, and good afternoon to your listeners.
So let's focus on the Mobile World Congress. It highlighted how 4G as well as 5G networks combined with artificial intelligence and IoT are key to driving productivity, but also key to reshaping industries across the African continent. Could you break this down for us? How so?
So 5G technologies are being rolled out, and the advantage of 5G technologies, for example, is faster speeds and lower latencies. So, for example, they are it's a good technology for, say, enterprises that are in remote locations, need private networks with reliable connectivity, for example. And also, it's very favorable to providing, say, connectivity in line with fiber-like experiences.
So it has been projected that by the year 2030, 5G could generate over $11 billion for sub-Saharan Africa. And by thus doing, it would then be accounting for more than 6% of the mobile economy. Could you brief us on some of the economic impacts of 5G in Africa?
Yeah, Thami, there are lots of numbers being thrown about, but I think one of the big impacts is that 5G will bring, let's say, more fixed connectivity to more people on the continent. As you know, connectivity and has been largely mobile on the continent, but with 5G and fixed wireless access, you can start offering consumers and enterprises fixed-like experiences over the mobile network. That will generate additional revenues. I think fixed wireless access is one of the big opportunities for operators on the continent.
And how can telecoms shift from traditional operators to platforms that are driving innovation across various industries?
So all the operators are engaged in innovation. Everyone is aware that things need to change. I know, a lot of your listeners may be experiencing 5G in sort of the more affluent areas where it's been rolled out to provide mobile users with higher speeds and a better experience. But I think this can also be rolled out very successfully in areas to provide a lower cost fixed line type experience that could be accessed by more people. And that in that way making it a much more inclusive rollout of the technology.
And that has been quite key, a key focus, this rollout that is not only affordable, but also serves areas that are underserved, like the rural communities. What is it going to take in order to have equitable access to technology?
I think it's really important that we make sure that 5G doesn't increase the digital divide. I think it will take some innovation, and innovation, I think, not from a technological point of view, but more from a collaboration perspective. So governments, operators, and potentially even aid agencies working together to fund infrastructure rollout in poorer areas, more rural areas. I think there's also the opportunity for operators to work together and to share, for example, backhaul infrastructure so that they're lowering their costs overall. There's also the opportunity for AI to play a role in helping with managing and maintaining these networks, reducing the need for electricity consumption. So there are many opportunities out there for how we can think about this.
Well, the discussions also did center on using technology to achieve sustainable growth. And this includes energy efficient networks as well as financial inclusion. How can telcos balance network expansion with energy efficiency and resilience, given the continent's infrastructure constraints?
It's a great question. And it does talk to, for example, the need to explore some more renewable sources of energy, in particular solar on the continent, for example. But, with the 5G networks, they do use more electricity. So I think it's exploring other options, again, using AI potentially to reduce electricity consumption when networks are not in use can also be helpful.
All right, Lohini, we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Thank you so much for your insight. It sounds like a wonderful congress taking place in Kigali in Rwanda. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Thami. Lovely speaking to you.
Same here. Thank you. That's Lohini Moodley, partner in the Communications, Media and Technology practice at Oliver Wyman, all around the Mobile World Congress was taking place in Rwanda, where new technologies like 5G and their impact on development, on economies, and specifically, underserviced economies, how they can be harnessed in order to ensure equitable distribution and progress. It's 49 minutes after 4.
Africa at Play with Neto and ETO Chemane.
I've witnessed something fresh, something exciting, and something very inspirational from the president of the country, William Ruto. Whenever athletes are performing to their best level, he always comes on board to reward those athletes, be it football, be it athletics, and not leaving it up to the sport ministry.
The president realizes that sports is a business, and for that reason, he also reduces the number of people who are jobless, because sports now is such a serious business, and for that reason, commercialization of sports is a major way of improving or increasing employment opportunities for the young people, and that is why the president has been very persistent in trying as much as possible to inspire more sports personalities to reduce the baggage of the people who are struggling to get job opportunities in the country among the young people.
Francis FM Mutegi, our correspondent from East Africa in Nairobi, Kenya.
Live every Saturday and Sunday from 2 to 5 p.m. Central African Time. African Enterprise meets global opportunity. Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It is now 10 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African Time. The South African Reserve Bank is holding firm on its decision to aim for a 3% inflation target, saying it will anchor price stability and support long-term growth. There is expectation that National Treasury will make some kind of announcement regarding the inflation target next month at the medium-term budget policy statement. This comes as emerging markets face slower growth and renewed uncertainty from the U.S. tariffs and global debt concerns. Dimakatso Leshoro reports.
At the bank's National Monetary Policy Forum this week, Governor Lesetja Kganyago says the world economy remains unpredictable.
We are in an uncertain environment, and this uncertainty is going to be with us for some time to come. As we stand today, trade disputes and geopolitical tensions are in the spotlight. It is only in April, as we were going to the spring meetings of the IMF and the World Bank, that there were announcements about tariffs, and it added to the uncertainty.
That volatility, Kganyago says, is shaping how central banks and governments think about monetary policy. He pointed to tariff shocks and geopolitical risks that could slow global growth and keep inflation in focus. At home, the economy has shown better than expected growth in the second quarter, helped by rising household consumption. Senior economist at the South African Reserve Bank, Dr. Chris Lewald, told the forum that the shocks have not impacted the global economy as expected, adding that global disinflation is losing steam and the picture for emerging economies is mixed.
That disinflation trend is weakening and risks look decidedly mixed. And I think the big question out there is this going to generate a further move down in inflation, or are we going to see a deepening of stagflation?
He says South Africa stands out slightly among emerging markets, with growth projected to increase mostly driven by household spending and not investment. Gross fixed capital formation has increased slightly, but it's still in negative territory.
South Africa's growth performance is being buoyed by household consumption, to some extent also general government. The household consumption, of course, is a much higher weighting in the domestic demand basket compared to general government, and very poor outcomes from gross fixed capital formation. You see the exchange rate coming down to about 17 rands to the dollar, and part of that is because the terms of trade remain quite strong in historical terms. And so net exports are also contributing to a bit of a tailwind to growth in the economy.
That consumption boost has not helped keep inflation stable, hovering close to 3% over the past year. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee has cut rates by 125 basis points since late 2024 and paused in September. Governor Kganyago says lowering inflation closer to 3% brings South Africa in line with its trading partners and ultimately creates policy space. And for government, Kganyago added the budgetary payoff could be huge.
Over a 10-year period, we estimate that to be about 900 billion. Just take a straight line over 10 years and we'll say is 90 billion rands a year. Cut those savings by 2/3 and say that is 300 billion over 10 years. That's still 30 billion rands over 10 years. The estimates of the Treasury says a 2% VAT increase will bring in 30 billion rands of revenue. I am saying to you, the lowering of the inflation target will add 30 billion rand to the fiscals through the savings in debt service costs. So that's the conversation South Africans need to have.
Debt service costs remain one of South Africa's largest spending items, and the governor argues that fiscal planning should reflect actual inflation outcomes, not outdated assumptions like the 4.5% that's been used by National Treasury.
It is not what the inflation target is what the inflation outcomes are. And the inflation outcomes at the moment are at 3% and 3.4%. And next year to 3.6, and the other year at 3%. So I see no rationale for planning and saying that we are planning on a higher target. That is part of the knots that the Reserve Bank and the Treasury's joint macro standing committee team is having to go and tie up. I do not expect them to come back and say we must target a higher inflation rate. They have already raised the stakes too high.
But questions from the floor show that there's still concern. One participant asked whether the Reserve Bank's lower inflation preference might clash with government's fiscal stance, creating policy mismatch. Kganyago pushed back, saying monetary policy can't be bent to fiscal pressure, warning against what he called fiscal dominance.
Once you enter into that space, where monetary policy sets interest rates because fiscal policy is too loose, and because fiscal policy is too loose, to accommodate fiscal policy, the central bank then loosens monetary policy. You have entered the era of fiscal dominance. And that movie only ends up in one way: tears.
As the finance minister prepares to deliver the midterm budget next month, markets will watch for confirmation of the new inflation target. For now, the Reserve Bank is clear. South Africa's path to stability runs through discipline in a world still wrestling with tariffs, debt, and uncertainty. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakato Leshoro in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
Well, that's how we come to the end of this Friday and this week's edition of Africa in Business. And we hand the reins over now to Joël and the team for Vue d'Afrique. Bonjour, madame.
Bonjour, Thami. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa sur Vue d'Afrique. Tout à l'heure, il sera question de la présidentielle au Bénin, le rejet de la candidature des démocrates, qui est le principal parti de l'opposition. Et nous parlerons également de la présidentielle en Côte d'Ivoire en général et tout ce qui s'y trame, puisque nous sommes à la veille du scrutin. Merci de rester connectés. C'est pour tout à l'heure. Merci, Thami.
Merci beaucoup. From myself, Thami Ngubeni, and the entire team at Africa in Business, you have yourself a splendid day further. Restez connectés as Vue d'Afrique comes up in just a moment.